Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Karen Greer, and I'm with Secure Content Technologies, and I am very happy to be here with Derek Bateman of Binary Defense. Derek, welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me. I always enjoy these.
They're wonderful. You're a great guy to talk to. So today we're talking about reframing risk and what today's threats mean for organizations. And so we're not talking about risky business, Tom Cruise sliding across the floor in his underwear. We're not going there, right?
I mean, it's always a way to date ourselves. I mean, happy to do that.
Indeed. But I mean, the issues are really pressing, I think, for organizations today, and to try to figure out, what these modern threats mean to them, why cyber criminals are going after their under-resourced teams, which is a common element, and how they can kind of build leaner, right-sized defenses. And a big question for me that I'd like to bring out as we go along is, what does secure enough mean in 2025? And I want to end with, why binary defense? Because I've got a lot to say about that, and I know that you do as well. But maybe we could start with why cyber criminals are going after under-resourced teams, because that's a common concern and worrisome issue that I hear from, I would say, all of my customers.
Well, that's a big question, but let's see if we can't make it very, very streamlined here. Well, they're focusing on the burnout and the alert fatigue that a lot of these under-resourced teams have, right? You don't need 50 people to secure a network. I mean, it doesn't need this massive undertaking when you have partners such as Binary Defense to be able to come in here and take care of it. It's not magic, right? What they're doing, they're opportunists, right? And an under-resourced team is low-hanging fruit because they can't see everything that's coming along. They can't investigate every alert, especially if they're not properly tuned, right? A lot of these companies will put in a solution, but they just have the out-of-the-box rules without much of a way of tuning it, or maybe even the knowledge of how to tune it.
This is true. And, too, some of my customers will call up and they'll say, we think we need a SIM. And my first question is, well, why? And they're like, well, we need to see all the alerts. We need to see everything that's coming through. And as you talk through that story with them, they really don't need to see everything that's coming through. No. They really need, in my opinion, an expert MDR solution that will show them what they need to see, what's important for them to see as a whole. And because a lot of them get fatigue alert, right? There's so much to see here.
Well, it's not about ingesting everything. It's about ingesting what actually matters. And I think that's where those lines get blurred, is they think they need to see everything. And it's great, as much information as you can get, because the more information you have, the more intelligent response actions you can give. But if you don't understand, do you or do you not need firewall logs brought into your SIM? That's one of those things that eats up a lot of data. And that, of course, it adds to the cost. So it's about making sure you know what information actually matters to the alerts and to the analysts, so that they can do their due diligence and make sure that you're secure. So if they say they need a SIM, we ask the same question: why do you need a SIM? And if they don't have an answer, then we kind of go along the same lines and we start talking about, let's see what brought you to this conclusion.
Right. And I think it's just educating yourself, right? If you look at the speed of which cybersecurity is changing, the speed at which the threats are changing, and all the solutions that are out there,
right?
I think it's easy for people to kind of become a little bit overwhelmed with the choices that they have, and know how to best secure themselves.
And also, are they being told the truth? There's a lot, and I'm not going to point fingers and say this or that and the other, but there are a lot of promises and over promising, but not delivering what the expectation that they set right off the bat. So you're having to try to weave your way through all of these other competing vendors and all these other pieces of marketing that, what is true, what isn't, who's operating with integrity and who's not. So you're right. There's a lot coming at organizations, and it's very hard to see who's going to be on their side and not just trying to take their wallet.
How do you think that, as we experience a lot of these new modern threats, and because I do feel like they're evolving, AI is becoming a player in all of this, but
AI.
Oh, it's on its own, isn't it?
Yeah, that alone makes everybody go, oh no. Well, I think the biggest thing is not every single one of those threats is going to light up your antivirus. They look like an admin logging in at 2 a.m. or updating some type of hidden vendor update that could have some kind of hidden malware. Log4j. I was operating as a SOC manager when Log4j dropped, and it did look like a low priority alert because it did come in as a low priority alert at my previous employee. And one of my L1 analysts said, hey, this looks weird because this IP address, this what it's reaching out to, this doesn't make sense. And so, senior analyst and we all looked at it and we said, that's weird. Isolate that endpoint. And let's dig in a little deeper. And this is before the news actually hit it. So as we're seeing this, we started seeing it around, but we were isolating it now because we had seen this and we're like, this is a weird thing. We're going to isolate it. And we're checking with the client. And that's when the news dropped. Now, at the time, as a manager of that SOC, I'm proud to say that not one single client saw any kind of hit or adverse action from Log4j because L1 analysts said, hey, this looks weird. And here at Binary Defense, the analysts do the same thing because they're intimately aware of what's going on inside the environment. They operate in pods. So this analyst works with these teams and works with these organizations. And in that, they learn the behavior of those networks. So if they see something weird, they say something.
And those threats don't usually happen at a convenient time.
Oh, no, they don't. Like I said, 2 a.m., it just looks like it's something else. But you also got to remember it's fileless identity-based attacks, right? We're talking no malware, just some stolen creds and abused trust in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
There's also living off the land. We're talking RDP, PowerShell, built-in tools, supply chain infiltration, just like we talked about with Log4j. Attackers compromise vendor or software updates. AI-generated phishing and payloads. Those look very, very good now. They're really quick and easy to mimic, even down to the CEO's voice. These beat basic filters and some of the EDR rules that are in place, which is what happens whenever you're looking at it from a defender's perspective and not from an attacker's perspective.
Interesting. I hear too, some people will say, well, I've kind of pushed this off to someone else to handle security, or they've pushed it off to like someone in their supply chain, right? Instead of themselves.
Right.
They're like, I know we couldn't be a target. We couldn't possibly be a target. I still am hearing that sort of rhetoric today. And it honestly does still surprise me that people feel like they're either too small to be a target or they couldn't be one. Are you still hearing that in the industry, or do you feel like we're coming to a new realization here?
Unfortunately, I have to agree with you. I'm still hearing it inside this. Even today in 2025, we're still hearing it. What I find strange about it is it's one of those, we don't feel like it's going to be us unless we're hit. Right. Like you said, we're too small. No, you're not to the attacker. They just haven't found you yet. One of the things I told all my analysts, and I still to this day is there's two types of network: those that have been breached, those that don't know they've been breached. So and you have to have that mindset, because then it keeps you on your toes and say, I need to make sure that my crown jewels are good to go here at this company and that everything I need to operate is secure. I don't know what, in all honesty, it would take for everybody to kind of collectively say, hey, we need to do this. But I have a good feeling that it has a lot to do with budget.
I think you're right. And there are ways that we can help clients become secure enough and take their budgets into consideration at the same time. It doesn't have to cost them an arm and a leg to do so.
No, it doesn't at all. I know that's kind of the illusion, is that the more you pay, the more secure you are. No, that is not true. And even in some cases, if they're paying, just throwing ballparks out there, $50,000, $60,000 a year for MDR services, and they think that that's budget security, when in all actuality, that's somebody who's really working hard to make sure that maybe the 50 to 100 endpoints that you are securing have been secured, or 500 endpoints have been secured. So cost is more attached to the budget that you're given, but it doesn't really show what the security you're going to get from it, right? Some vendors charge more, some charge less, some are in the middle. But what you really should be looking at is how well do they integrate with your teams? How quickly can you, adapt and recover from and if an attack happens? And what does that service look like when it comes to your metrics? Are they able to tell you that, hey, look, all this work that you were worried about, we took care of it. Here's the only things you need to worry about. There's a lot more that goes into it than just the money aspect of it. And there's also that relationship building.
And I do feel like a lot of times people may know networking very, very well. Security is an ever-evolving thing that you constantly have to be training yourself on. So if you're managing the network and you're doing that hat really well, the security piece, gosh, how do you do both at the same time?
You have a good partner that can do one or the other for you. trying to put everything on your plate, you're always going to have something falling off. You have to have a secure part that look at it from an attacker's perspective instead of just looking at it from a defender's, right? You can build the biggest walls you want, as big as you want. You can do all this, but even in ancient times, those who built the biggest and thickest walls eventually fell to the aggressors because they adapted while they stayed stagnant. Case in point, one of the reasons Rome existed for so long as it did, even though it went through many, many different changes, is because they kept looking at it not only from a defender, but an attacker's perspective, right? We built this big wall. How could we breach it? Can they go underneath it? Can they go around it? Is there anything so they kept in mind that while they're building their defenses, they're also looking at how those defenses could fall to an attacker. And that's what a lot of the major ancient civilizations were able to keep going, is they adapted to the changing times, and then they overcame those challenges.
Well, and to me, that is what a good MDR partner does for you and helps you do, and keep it top of mind for you, right?
Right. And as long as they're also offering you the visibility on your data, right? You need to be able to see what's happening. You need to be able to ask those questions. It's your data. You should be able to ask the question and get the timely response, right? You should be able to know what's happening with it. You shouldn't just have it tossed into a black hole and say, oh, I'm sure they're taking it. Oh, don't assume.
This is true. True, very true. So as we evaluate and look forward even further, I know that AI is going to continue to be a very big component in A, the protection that we're offering customers, but B, the threats that they're dealing with.
Yes.
So I'm really interested to hear your take on that. It could be with a corporation, it could be with a school. I'm finding that to be a topic that comes up multiple times a day. People are literally afraid of AI. They don't fully understand it, but I also don't think they're seeing both sides, the benefit of how it can protect them and the threat of how it can harm them. It's a two-edged sword.
Well, you're kind of going back to that thing you were talking about before, is the adaptation, the seeing what's happening. 1992, yeah, I'm dating myself. Internet came out. So what was it? People were fearful of it. Well, how's it going to change society? And then when online shopping began, oh my goodness, you remember all of the stuff that so there's always this initial fear about what we don't understand.
True.
We have to get around that and say, okay, this is now here and it's not going away and you can't ignore it. So how are the attackers using it to try to hurt me? And how can I use it in order to prevent those attacks? So advanced machine learning, artificial intelligence, whatever you want to call it, it's here now. And it is a threat that is going to have to be dealt with in the corporations because the attackers are using it. Now, dark web has been showing ransomware as a service. I'm sure many people have heard of this. And now what they're doing is trying to figure out ways to use what they call ghost GPTs. So they have stripped the barriers from those LLMs. And now they're using them to do the work and automate that work so that it's more efficient. And it also blends in a lot more with the behavior of humans. So it is absolutely at the forefront. I have taken some dives in the deep web and some of those forums, and I do have to translate the Cyrillic to see what they're talking about. But a lot of what they're talking about is using those ghost GPTs in order to proliferate attacks and build those profiles against the individuals so that they can do the phishing and the spear phishing campaigns.
That's really quite amazing.
They haven't slowed down, and just because they move quiet and they're moving in the dark and they're moving behind the scenes, right? The internet alone, you're only dealing with the top portion. It's like an iceberg, right? You're just walking around on the surface, but there's all the rest underneath. That is where a lot of them exist.
I think it is too. And I'm actually hearing a lot of people are like, well, we didn't realize the Internet of Things was actually a thing that people could reach.
Your thermostat. Yeah, your thermostat in your house, if it's not, or if you're using the default password on your gateway that you didn't change when you got it from whatever your ISP provider is, those are online. They can just go through and they just hit the routers and they see whether or not anybody left their default password, or they decided to go with password 1234, but exclamation point. So most of the breaches are happening due to human error and very, very silly mistakes that even today, even with all the threats and all the knowledge, are still happening.
Which kind of speaks to the point that as much as we all need technology, there has to be the human element in there as well, combined to really protect the client fully, right? It can't just be AI or it can't just be automation. There has to be that human element in there still. And I don't think that will ever completely go away.
No, I mean, would you want it to? If we can automate a lot of the isolation that happens with endpoints. So there's a lot of things you say, hey, if this reaches out to a Russian IP address and you don't have any reason to do that, then it's isolation. Those kind of things can be put in. But yeah, I agree. There's a lot of little preventive measures that can be taken, but overall, it does, from what I'm hearing, it does come down to what they're budgeted to, and is leadership on board, and do they understand that maybe we shouldn't go with this company over here because you guys were together, hung out, or whatever it was in the past. It needs to be more about what is offered and versus what you're facing. And if they align, then that means you need to dig in and start doing a little bit more research and then talking to to the individuals in that company and see whether or not only do the security concerns align, but does the culture align, right? Can we get along well? Can we have a good conversation? Do you understand the way we want to reach out? So it is relationship building, but we have to make sure that we're doing it with the security in mind. And not to go too far and too long, but we are seeing a lot of usage of AI into environments. And my first thing is, are we worrying about it working, or are we worried about it being secure? Because our history has shown we care more about it working before we care about security. Because 1992 through 1994, 1995, I don't remember much about security in networks. I just remember us trying to figure out how can we get to this website, and how do we operate around Netscape versus, yeah, I'm dating myself. Netscape was the one for a while before we went over to Explorer, right?
It was. Gosh, even I remember that. Yeah, that's scary.
I remember being in the computer labs, being taught how to use the internet, so.
Right. That was a real thing.
Yeah, but at no point was there security. Nobody was talking about security.
No.
Maybe I'm off, but I think the email worms were kind of the first thing, the I love you worm. And it didn't really kick off the security talk until those things started affecting people.
True. Yeah. And I do think that we all are also dealing with alert fatigue in the news. Yes. There's always a new breach coming down the pike. And so people can be, and sometimes are, complacent about just hearing, oh, this company got breached or that one got breached. It doesn't really hit home that, hey, this, for my company, this is really something that I need to be focused on.
Yeah, freeze or fawn, right?
Sure.
Sometimes paralysis by analysis. Right? You can start looking at so many vendors that you can't make a decision. There's so many different things coming at you that during your time of trying to decide which one to go to, 3 months, 6 months goes by, and all of a sudden, boom, you get hit. And who do you call? You're not Ghostbusters, right? You're not calling them. So it's like, who do you call? Now you got this list of people, but now you have to put your trust immediately into somebody. And emotional decisions don't typically grant great outcomes. You have to have decisions made off of the information that you're able to contain and to bring in, but not emotional decisions. That's where a recipe for disaster.
So if you have a solid MDR partner, you're not going into that situation unprepared, because that managed service is going to be there with you along the way. And that to me is worth a lot of peace of mind.
Oh, I mean, it should be, right? You should be able to rely on your security vendor to make sure that your networks, you're handing over the entirety of trust, saying that keep me running and keep the attackers at bay. Right. And secure the crown jewels, make sure that nothing hurts our ability to be productive. It's not so much of if you're going to get hit. It is always a win, because we have to be right as security practitioners every day, every moment, do everything. That's a lot of pressure. And that's what drives us to try to do that the best job possible. But the attackers only have to be good once. Case in point, I was at a company barbecue as a manager, and I got a call from a hospital who had been hit by a ransomware attack. Their payroll computer, the lady who had been working there for 20 years, and checking invoices, doing her job, boom, got hit, locked down. That was the point of entry. Now, they couldn't pay their doctors, they couldn't pay their nurses, and the medicine was locked up, the ones that were on the network. So they couldn't even dispense medicine to ICU patients. So I get this call while I've got a plate full of barbecue, right? And I'm thinking about that. And they called me and they said, hey, this is what's happened. And oh, by the way, you're on a conference call with the entire leadership of the hospital.
Oh, shoot.
So let me go ahead and set this plate down and let me go ahead and head back into the SOC and see what's going on. So in less than 5 minutes, I was able to come up with a plan using a security tool we had at the time that allowed me to take their 6 most priority computers, their main production computers, and put them in a very, very tight security plan, right? It allowed me to really put them in there and apply everything that tool had. And it ate the malware the minute it tried to come up. This was a very good tool at the time. I won't say the name. It is no longer as good as it was, but it was great. It was amazing. And it allowed me to put it in that profile, and then it ate it. So then what happened? Payroll got unlocked. Medicine cabinets got unlocked. ICU patients started receiving their medicine. The doctors got paid. And, I did this just thinking, let's think outside the box, and let's say, forget the box. Let's just go find out what we can do to fix this. And we were able to. So after that call ended and they sent me the email saying they were good to go, I went out and finished my barbecue. Now, just a day in the life in a sock, right? So fast forward, I'm going to pick up my kid hours later, and I'm on the call. I got a call from the contractor that they had hired to try to help them get themselves secure, thanking me for saving his job. He's like, I had no idea. It wasn't about shaming anybody. It was about how do we all come to a collective agreement, and let's get this straightened, because we got patients that need medicine and we got doctors and nurses. And it ended up being a point of saving them $750,000. They didn't pay any ransom. We cleaned them up in a week. They were operational that day. We just started pulling every computer into that very restrictive profile that I had built. And every computer that went through it, the malware got eaten, and they were clear. And so within a week, they were up and running like nothing had ever happened. That day, they were able to do what they needed to do. It was just mainly making sure that all the other computers were good, and those that couldn't really be fixed because they were either off network or not monitored had to be rolled back to a good gold image.
That's a fabulous story. It had to give you immense pride to be able to do something like that.
It did. It made me feel like that was one of the reasons, like when I signed up to serve in the military, was because I wanted to serve my country. Now, when I got out of the military, I still wanted to serve, but wars were winding down, and what I was doing and what I needed to do for my family had changed. So going into IT and getting the degree in information security and doing, the threat intelligence. I ran a threat intelligence cell. I've helped run a SOC. I have helped run a support team. And I've been the guy who did the training for new and existing clients. So it was anything I could do, because I knew that any help I was giving was benefiting not only the companies, but also US citizens. So that's one of the reasons too, I came to Binary Defense. Every single one of us is a US citizen based in the US. So you always get to talk to somebody who knows your networks and is familiar with the threats that are against it.
Oh, I'm so glad you made that point. That brings back in the human element, which I think is massively important. So as we kind of wind down, one important thing that I really want to cover in a business, I was very quick to embrace binary defense. And one of the things that really drove me to do that was the fact that binary defense meets customers where they are.
We do.
You're the master at talking about that much more than I could ever be. So I'd love to hear from your standpoint how binary defense does that, what differentiates you and helps you stand out in this very competitive market.
Well, we do meet you where you're at. And everything we talk about is exactly why binary defense exists. Purpose built, give you security, works at the speed of business, right? We're moving at the speed of you. Right. We're not sitting back and letting these things fester. We're trying to take care of them as quick as possible. We don't throw alerts over the fence. We don't just say, hey, you might want to think about this. No. If we're giving you an alert and saying, hey, this has been escalated to you, that means most of the due diligence has been done. Now it's on your side to see, what can you do to, based on our recommendations, they'll be strategic and tactical. If they, and then saying, hey, go ahead and go do these things, because the last thing you want for us not, to be inside there changing things inside your network. No. You want us to secure your network. We want to make sure that we cut it off from the network if we need to for a device if there's an attack. So we're a force multiplier. It doesn't matter if you're cloud, it doesn't matter if you're hybrid or somewhere in between. We're gonna integrate into the stack that exists. Now, if you love the stack that you have and it's providing good data, good intel, we're gonna integrate with it, right? The only reason we wouldn't is if the data that's coming out of it is pardon my word, but trash.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff out there that's not good. And if something goes wrong, we move fast, right? The first 15 minutes of attack is the difference between contained incident and a full crisis. So we are moving very quickly. And I'm proud to say that in our stock, a priority 1, which is critical, right? That's the one that you want. Average time is between 12 and 13 minutes from detection to isolation. And then during that time, you're going to get a phone call based on whatever the playbook or the onboarding process that we agreed to. If it's an endpoint that you say we can isolate, we're going to isolate it. If you say call us before you isolate, we're going to do that. You get to drive your security. We're there to provide the security. You tell us what you need and how you want it to be performed. And as long as it's within that security barrier that we're comfortable with, we meet you where you're at. So you asked the question, what does secure enough mean in 2025? Can you detect, respond, and recover from an attack efficiently and effectively? And if the answer is no, then you're not secure. So that's secure enough means having the right partner, one that will help you sleep at night and provide value during the day. And that's why binary defense is here.
You summed it up perfectly, and I love the whole story. The company has given me a big boost of confidence to continue in the MDR market. I've found it was getting a little wishy-washy, right? Like everybody's like throwing this acronym out and that acronym out. And when you really sit down and listen to the binary defense story and why it does meet customers where they are, I think it's an absolute game changer.
It has to be. It has to be that way. We have to be a partnership and we have to work together, and the communication must be clean and effective for us to be able to tackle the threats that are coming at us. So we're happy to do the work. We actually enjoy it. And the company is created by a veteran. I am myself a veteran. There's quite a few veterans that are there at the company, and we're there to serve. So, we can't go deploy overseas, but we can secure home here. And it gives us a quiet pride to every day when I open up this laptop. I know I'm doing something that actually matters.
Thank you for your service.
Well, thank you for the support.
Very much so.
Appreciate it.
This was a wonderful session. I hope that our listeners got some great knowledge that they can take back to their business, some things they can think over. And if anyone has any questions, would like to hear more about binary defense, talk to Derek and I one-on-one, we would be more than happy to have those conversations with you. But we very much appreciate your attendance today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. It was a pleasure as always.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I hope to do it again.